Aloha, everyone. Thank you for attending tonight's meeting. I'm Heleni Sonoda Pole, the Chair of the Community Representation Initiative. And we are going to start with an oli to center ourselves, why we're here, which is for the vai. Everyone has the words. We're going to stand up and do the oli together. We're going to face our queen, Queen Liliuokalani, the last ruler of Hawaii. Mahalo.
Ola I kawai a, ola I kawai, ola I kai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. Ola I kaha, ola I kawai, ola I kai, Hawaii, Hawaii. Hawaii, ola I kaha, ola I kawai, ola I kai, Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii.
Mahalo. Now that we've got that taken care of, and we are now centered on why we are here, I want to just make a few announcements. There is water in the refrigerator in the kitchen. So if you go in through there, there'll be, just open the refrigerator and there's water. Our cooler was leaking, so we had to move it there. There's food. Please help yourself. There's the agenda here. And also we have a handout for, and we'll post this as well. It's a handout with information on where you can call if you are experiencing increased contamination in your water, in your vai. So we wanna make sure everybody gets that information and where you should be filing a report if you are experiencing increased water contamination in your water. I see the CEO of OHA here. Aloha, did you want to share a few words? Mahalo nui loa. Thank you. Mahalo nui loa for the usage of this beautiful space. And we're going to get started on the agenda in the interest of time right now. We are going to start with introductions. And we will start with the CRI introductions, beginning with Susan, going down, and then we'll just go around the table. And then we'll go on to Zoom and get the introductions from Zoom, from the CRI members and from the EPA and Joint Task Force if they're here. Thank you.
Susan Gorman Chang. I'm from Eva Beach and I am a CRI member representing Oahu residents.
Hi, I'm Walter Chun. I am a CRI representative representing the public.
Aloha, I'm Melody Aduha, representing organizations, which would be the Environmental Caucus of the Democratic Party, and I'm from Kahalu'u.
Aloha, I'm Heleni Sonoda Pole. I am representing the Native Hawaiian community, and I am from Oahu, Kuli'o'o. Mahalo.
Hello, I'm Lacey Quintero. I'm a member of the CRI representing the impacted community.
Aloha, o Kioni ko Inoa. I'm Kioni DeFranco, and I'm here as a substitute representative of the Native Hawaiian community.
Aloha, I'm Marty Townsend. I am a representative of the CRI for the general public, and I currently live in Kalihi.
Aloha, my name is Joey Padua. I am a substitute CRI member representing the public.
I'm Steve Irvin with the Office of the Deputy Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Environment.
Aloha, good afternoon. I'm Ben Dunn. I represent the Naval Facilities Engineering Systems Command, Hawaii.
Good evening. I am Mark Williams. I'm the Deputy Commander for the Naval Closure Task Force. Hey, good evening. I'm Brigadier General Michelle Link. I'm the Deputy Commander, Joint Task Force Red Hill, and their Chief Engineer.
Do we have Mandy online and Kimo, if you can introduce yourselves?
Hi, I'm Mandy Fines. I'm a former resident of Fort Island. I'm calling you now from Fort Belvoir, Virginia, where I'm now restationed. And I am a representative of the impacted families along with Lacey.
Thank you. Kimo, are you on? Okay, he's stuck in traffic. One of our CRI members will be a little late tonight. We will, can we start with Amy and the EPA representatives?
Hi, this is Amy Miller. I'm the Director of the Enforcement and Compliance Assurance Division, and I will pass it to Claire Tromador. Or shall I introduce everybody on the EPA team?
Can you hear me? It
Yeah.
wasn't letting me unmute. Okay. Hello, I'm Claire Trombador. I'm the Director of the Land, Chemicals, and Redevelopment Division at EPA Region 9. And I'll pass it to Laura Ebert.
Aloha, my name is Laura Ebert. I'm the Director of the Tribal Intergovernmental and Policy Division at EPA Region 9. I'm based in San Francisco. Allison?
Hi, everyone. Allison Fong. I'm the Assistant Director of the RIPR branch in our Land, Chemicals, and Redevelopment Division. I'll pass it to Matt.
I'm Matt Cohen, and I am the project coordinator for the AOC.
Aloha, my name is Karen Davis. I'm the Community Involvement Coordinator for EPA for Red Hill. I'm happy to see you all again.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dominique Smith. I'm the Environmental Justice Community Engagement Coordinator for Red Hill and for EPA. Tonight, I am the Zoom support. So if you have any Zoom issues, just chat me.
Okay, and then Kimo just came on. He's a CRI member. Kimo, can you introduce yourself, please?
David Franco, Sierra Club. Thank you.
Okay, so I've also seen I think I see Carnick on there.
Yes, I'm here. I hope you can hear me. This is Carney Gohanessian with the Department of the Navy.
Iolani, DLA is also here.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Oh,
This
okay,
is-
good. I was just going to ask that.
Hi, everyone. This is Dave Klass. I'm the Deputy Commander for DLA Energy, and thank you for the opportunity to participate tonight.
Hi, everyone.
Anyone else from DLA?
Yes, ma'am. Hi, I'm Eric Wiedemann, and I also work at Defense Logistics Agency.
Great. And anybody from the Joint Task Force, Red Hill? Oh, that's you. Okay, you're representing that Joint Task Force. Okay. So no Wade, no Admiral Wade tonight. Okay. Okay, thank you for being here. Anyone else that we need to introduce for the public's awareness and for our awareness? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. Oh, I see. Hi, aloha. Aloha, Trustee Akaka. Please introduce yourself.
Mahalo. I see I've now been unmuted. So, aloha pumehana, ova'o Kali Akaka. I'm Kali Akaka. Kali Hina Akaka. I'm with the Office of Foreign Affairs. I'm honored to serve as the OHA Oahu trustee, as well as chair of OHA's Committee on Beneficiary Advocacy and Empowerment. Aloha, everyone.
Thank you, Chair Akaka. It's an honor to have you here with us. Mahalo nui. And thank you everyone for
Alani.
coming. And yes.
Hey, Alani, for the public or those folks that are on Zoom, we weren't able to hear why it was that Admiral Wade is not in attendance for the second meeting in a row. Could you repeat that or have someone with the mic repeat that so that we could hear the reasoning why?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So my name is General Link, and I'm the Deputy Commander of JTF Red Hill. We are currently in the middle of a complex defueling operation. You may be aware that we are unpacking. During the last CRI meeting, I was off island and Admiral Wade was overseeing unpacking then. So between the two of us, we have representation here tonight on behalf of JTF Red Hill. He extends his warmest wishes, but there again, we are still doing unpacking this week. One of us needs to be there to oversee that, and based on uncertain comments or questions that you may have of technical nature regarding Defuel Sub 3, we made the decision that I would represent tonight.
Mahalo. Mahalo, General. Mandy, is that adequate, or did you have further questions? Okay, so we can move on to the agenda. We have a very short time. And I want to mahalo everyone for being here. I know it is the holiday season and everyone is trying to get their shopping done. And you know, and people are busy. But this is really important, of course. And I want to just mahalo everyone, and mahalo again, OHA, Office of Hawaiian Affairs, for allowing us this space. Mahalo. Okay, so we are going to start with announcements. I think Amy is going to be sharing what's going on with their investigation.
Thank you. So EPA has been conducting an investigation into complaints that were raised through the Community Representation Initiative. We were able to go out and meet with the individual residents who have had concerns about drinking water and have experienced health impacts. So we have been reviewing the information concerning Navy sampling and follow-up investigation. And when that is complete, we will be issuing an inspection report. We hope to have that out this month. And we will be glad to brief the Community Representation Initiative at the next meeting. Thank you very much.
Amy, can you tell us what chemicals you were testing for?
The chemicals, so the Navy has a standard protocol. As you may recall, in the long-term monitoring plan, they do look for TPH, but they also look for the standard drinking water constituents. So when we do have an opportunity to brief you all, we would be glad to go over that in January.
So I know there's concern about whether they're testing for antifreeze. So the antifreeze and the jet fuel, you guys, are they testing for that specifically?
I would prefer, because it's an ongoing investigation, if you want to ask that question of the Navy, that would be preferable until we have our inspection report done.
You can't say whether you're testing for it?
I'm not testing. They have been doing the testing themselves.
I thought you folks did an investigation as well.
We did. We went and conducted interviews, and with the Department of Health, we have asked for the Navy to provide the sampling that's required under the existing long-term monitoring plan, so that we can evaluate their procedures and process, as well as the sampling results.
So EPA hasn't done any testing.
No, we have not done any physical sampling.
Yeah.
Okay, Walter has a question. Mahalo.
My question is for the Navy. The people that the people that filed the complaint had health effects. There was a reaction to the skin for some of their children. In the meantime, while we're doing this investigation, what is the Navy doing for that family?
And to be clear, for all of those families.
So the Navy is continuing its investigation and analysis of the water at these homes and several additional homes. And we have encouraged families to seek medical attention and consultation with their medical providers. And we will provide an update once we have concluded our assessment.
Are you providing
Sir,
them
these
an
families-
alternate water source?
Bottled water is offered, but all testing has come back within standards.
Can I, first of all, what standards are you talking about?
So the Department of Health establishes the standards for 266 for EALs and then all the other analytes. So you can go to the Safe Waters website and see the results for everything we've tested.
I understand that. Those are the environmental action levels, but those are not health standards. So are you referring to any kind of health standard when it comes to these families and health problems that they're having?
So again, we follow what DOH establishes as safe drinking water standards, and we meet those standards.
That's the only standard you're talking about, correct? Okay, and so my original question was, in the meantime, these families have to deal with the water and their health effects. And so you referred them to medical treatment. What other kinds of assistance have you provided for them, especially, as Mandy mentioned, alternative water?
So as we've continued our sampling, the results that we have obtained indicate that the water that we're testing meets drinking water standards. So we have no further basis to provide alternate water source.
So what is
Okay,
your
so your
response to the people that have rashes? If the drinking water is coming back safe according to whatever standard, clearly the water is not safe for some reason. And so until the investigation is complete, like, I just want to be clear to these families, know what sort of assistance is being provided. Like, is it a waste of time for the community to call because you come out there and test their water and they just have to wait for 2 months, 3 months to get results? Like, what's happening for them in the interim? Alternate water source, alternate living, a place to wash their clothes, pots and pans that are not like porous, things to eat with, like all of those things that should be considered when we're talking about human health, and the rashes that you see on the flyers that are sitting before you tonight.
Indeed. So again, the water sampling that we have collected and the results that we have to date meet drinking water standards. Therefore, we're not providing a basis for alternate water. We've again encouraged personnel and the residents to seek medical attention as the primary consultant for the symptoms that they're experiencing. And we are not yet done concluding our analysis of this investigation of premise plumbing.
Okay, I just want to make 2 statements for the record. Number one, you're referring to drinking water standards. The environmental action levels are not drinking water standards. And number 2, if you're looking only at water, what other conditions are you looking at that are causing health effects to the families. And I think our responsibility to the families is to provide some kind of concern, some kind of investigation to determine what is making their kids sick.
Thank you. Maggie, did you have any further questions?
I did. I just got a message from a concerned community member who just messaged me after listening to this. And I just want to read this for your situational awareness. They are absolutely not offering bottled water immediately after a report is made, the EOC is called and folks come out. They provided my family 5 cases of water only 1 week after my initial report and only after the EPA was notified by the CRI. That's one family. You've got 93,000 people in this drinking water system. So I'm just concerned as a representative for impacted families, regardless if you say that the water meets drinking water standards or not, there has to be an explanation as to why these people are still getting sick, as to why there's still sheen on their water, and as to why they and their children are still getting rashes today. And so I hear 2 years later that we are still erring on the side of it meets whoever's drinking water environmental standards. But my question back would be, what are you doing for those families in the interim until your investigation is complete? And second of all, who is the team that sits around and strategizes potential points of contamination that still exist that are still impacting your military and civilian families living on your Navy drinking water system? Who is part of that team that has strategized, that has analyzed, that has looked truly into what continues to harm the people on your drinking water system?
So we continue our assessment. We are not complete with our assessment of these residences. We have many personnel and staff involved in the planning and discussion of our procedures, but we remain in close coordination with the regulators on how we are conducting this assessment. And when we are done, I look forward to providing the results of this assessment.
Thank you. And we have heard we're in close coordination, the Interwater drinking team, all of these things, and I'll be done now. But I just want to be clear that none of your responses, sir, have addressed the human impact. And none of your responses have addressed what these people are supposed to do in the interim until someone decides to produce results of an investigation that has to be approved by someone's boss. Like that length of time does not stop people from getting rashes and being sick and having sheens on their water. So every day that we're, still looking over investigation results, please know and continue to know that your people are still getting sick, that there is still a sheen on the water, and that there are still rashes. Thank you. I'm done.
And can you tell us yes or no? Have you guys tested testing for EDB?
Again, I would go to the Safe Waters website. You can see every analyte that we test for.
That's not my question. My question is, are you testing for EDB? Yes or no? You should know that.
Go to the Safe Waters website. You'll see every analyte that we test for.
Yes or no?
Oh.
You're not testing for EDB, are you?
Go to the website.
Answer the question for the public.
Would it help if we pull up the website for you to review? Is that helpful? It's right here. Yeah, it's right here. Would it refresh your recollection to look at the website and search? What portion of the website is this information found, sir? Is it on the first page? Is it under which link, which tab? Yeah, please, come on. We have a long time to sit here until you can provide us direct us to the area where we can find EDB. Okay, please use the cursor and what? Can you use the microphone? Wait, so you don't even know how to operate your website? Okay, please operate your website if you know how to operate your website.
I'm gonna write it down for you, so you
Yes.
can find it. I can't find it on your website because it's not user friendly, but I'll write it down so you can find it.
It behooves
think
me
for
that
the sake
you
of
are telling
time-
us to operate a website that you yourself are not able to operate. Okay, please, here's the microphone.
Again. Again, the information and everything we test for is fully transparent and is posted to the Safe Waters website.
Okay, so now please guide us to where this transparent
I'm
information
not
is.
gonna do that.
You are not gonna do that. Yeah, it's right in front of you. You have no excuse. Please direct us to what part of the website it is located. Which tab? Because I looked at the website, sir.
I think for the sake of
Oh,
time,
I
we
see.
may need
Can't
to
find
table
it.
this. We are still in the announcements portion of the meeting. And we're quite over on time.
Again, the information, what is tested is available. Again, I said, everything we test for is listed on the website. Then it's not tested for. If it's not listed.
If it's not listed, it's not tested for. So your response is no.
Ben's going through it right now, to list what is and what isn't tested for.
I have one last comment on this. We're very concerned, obviously, about the health of the people who are still on the Navy water lines. And I would like it very much if you all could look into alternative sources of water. I personally have been doing that, and I have found that there is technology available that you can put, it's like a solar panel, but it captures water from air and you put it on the roof of a house. And I would very much like to see the Navy making progress towards finding alternative sources of water for people, especially during these interim periods where we don't know for sure if the water is safe because we're still studying. It keeps me up at night knowing that people aren't being exposed to fuel in the water in this way. So I would like to see you all care as much, please.
Thank you. And in the interest of time, we're gonna keep going. Thank you so much for the suggestions and the questions and for trying to answer the questions. Okay, so we are going to go to new rule. Marty, did you want to share that new rule? Thank you.
The new rule is we will not be having any commercials. We were very disappointed that Admiral Wade could not join the meeting last month. Further disappointed that he's chosen not to come this month. I understand that the work that you all are doing is very important, but also this engagement is extremely important. And we just found it particularly offensive, disrespectful, that instead of showing up, he had a very well polished commercial aired during our meeting. So new rule, no commercials.
Thank you. Do you guys have any response to that or any objections to no videos?
Mandy has her hand raised.
Thank you. And I would just
Okay.
ask for the CRI members that are on Zoom that you stop muting us. But I did just want to show, I mean, I know that there's been some issues with finding results, and I don't know if you can see this here, who knows if it'll let you see, but the test results from the same person who the EPA and the Navy came out, the results came back from the long-term monitoring test. And I want it to be known, to be clear, that the only thing that was screened was for chlorine and for TPH. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification, Mandy. So General Link, you were gonna respond to the no video rule. Thank you.
Yeah, so I appreciate your feedback in that regard. I don't know that, when you look at the complexity and what we're doing and how much we are doing relative to defueling in the last few months, and can appreciate that some of us have been out of the office and we need to cover down. There's no disrespect that was intended to anybody on the CRI board or anybody that's participating on the call this evening. We are currently just balancing the requirements of the mission.
So just in the future, I would recommend rescheduling the meeting or scheduling the meeting in such a way that the people who are supposed to be there can be there. What made it particularly offensive is that at the first meeting, Admiral Wade made a point of shaking everyone's hands and, promising to be back for follow-up, right? And at the last meeting, everyone that was here representing the military in some fashion were new. They were not people who had been at the first meeting. So our ability to follow up and verify was undermined. So that's part of the reason why, if he's going to make the point of being like, make eye contact with me and be like, I'm going to be back. And, and then he doesn't show, and he hasn't showed twice now, like, that's not good. So.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the FOIA issue. And we're gonna have Susan present that. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Gorman Chang, I am the keeper of the fabulous spreadsheet with all of our questions in writing. I want to give you some background about why this is on the agenda. So, we in the CRI were elected to do a job, and the consent order offers us, the CRI, a level of transparency with the Navy and the ability to bring community questions and our CRI questions to the Navy for answers. We've submitted to you our questions in writing so there can be no misunderstandings, and we have worked very hard in doing so. And I don't think we are seeing the same effort reciprocated on the Navy side in answering these questions. You're kind of prohibiting us from doing our job because our whole job was to get questions from the community answered. We're supposed to be a bridge between the community and the Navy. Questions to date, we have received 39 responses that qualify as answers. For the teachers among us, that's 25%. That would be an F grade. So I want to give you a chance to explain yourself why this is going so slow. But first I want to turn it over to Walter for a very specific example.
On October 4th, or just prior to October 4th, which is our first meeting, we submitted a list of questions, and I submitted 33 of those questions. 2.5 months later, we really don't have an answer other than we're directed to submit FOIA requests. So if that is what the process is going to be, then tell us ahead of time. Maybe we'll be more than happy to file the FOIA requests. But in the interest of transparency and trust, without knowing what we should know, or like I said in my very first meeting with you guys, is we don't know what we don't know. We don't know what you guys are doing. So we have questions and we deserve answers. To wait 2.5 months and then tell us to submit a FOIA request is really unacceptable. So on November 20th, I submitted this FOIA request that you guys directed me to do, and I have not gotten a response yet. And so I guess sometimes we have to wonder, how long is it going to take for us to get a response? Is it quicker to get a response from a FOIA request, or can I get a response from the people that are sitting across the table from us? A lot of them are simple questions. They're basic questions about what you posted. If you posted information on the internet and we have questions about that, why can't you provide us an answer? We just went through this big routine just a little while ago about you're telling us, look at the website, there's tons of data on there, but you can't find that information. How are we supposed to find it? And again, when we sit and ask questions and we ask for information, the sharing of information was the whole intent of the CRI, and we're not getting that. And so if it seems ridiculous, but if that's the process you want us to follow, to submit FOIA requests over and over again, we will do that. So my question to you all today is, if that's a process you want us to follow, please tell us. The other thing is having these meetings when we talk about these questions, we can't get somebody to provide answers. So we're not able to get an answer to that question. Do I submit a FOIA request for all my questions?
Carnick's gonna address it? Okay.
Okay, I could not unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. So it occurs to me that, if you submit a FOIA, then, council looks at it and there's a determination of what is releasable information and what is not releasable information. So even under FOIA, it's possible that the answer becomes, hey, that can't be released. So it occurs to me that perhaps it would be better if we not have to do FOIA. In other words, if it's releasable information under FOIA, we could provide it to you without FOIA. And if it's not releasable information under FOIA, then the FOIA wouldn't help anyway. So I think what we could do
give an
is,
example?
sure.
Okay, so
if it's,
it's in relation to this issue. I want to give you more information so you can answer better.
sure.
On December 4th, we met with Steve and Scott from the Navy, and we went through questions 1 through 66. And at that time, Steve said, oh, that, that needs a FOIA, or, oh, that's an OS, that's an operational security issue. Oh, that's an NS, that's a national security issue. So I asked him to, on the spreadsheet, to indicate under each of those questions, if it was a FOIA, an OS, or an NS. Then on December 12th, Steve came back and said he didn't have the authority, legal expertise, or clearance to make these notations on the spreadsheet. Where does that leave us? And the other thing is, Walter asked his questions October 4th. Why would we be told now that that needs a FOIA? And, we're perfectly willing to do FOIAs. It sounds like it might take just as long if we don't do a FOIA.
No, I think what I'm saying is that maybe it's better not to do a FOIA, because the ability to provide the answer doesn't change whether it's FOIA or not FOIA. We can either provide the answer or we can't. And so if you FOIA, you will get the same response. So perhaps we should answer the questions or not answer the questions without having to go through the FOIA process, but recognizing what is answerable and what is not.
Then we need you to put in writing, we cannot answer this question because it is operational security, national security, or whatever. We need a written in writing answer, which we have not gotten because Steve doesn't have the clearance.
So if, I'm sorry, I can't hear.
My response was, I'm not a classification authority. I am not a person that can make a determination whether a facility is.
Then who can?
Yeah, did you know that, Carney, that he doesn't have that authority? Did you know that he didn't have that authority?
So
yes or no?
Getting it. Okay, so we're not going to cross into legal cross-examination. What I'm saying is that the easier way is for us to provide you the answers that we can and not to provide the answers that we cannot, and simply identify which ones we cannot provide. In other words, if we cannot provide it, we cannot provide it whether it's FOIA or not. So I'm offering that perhaps going through that FOIA process, it might be more valuable to not go through the FOIA process and answer the ones that we can and not answer the ones that we cannot.
Okay, Carnegie, so maybe you can just give us an idea. How many days should we wait? 7 days, 14 days? And if we don't get a response, or if you guys can't figure it out, we'll submit the FOIA? Or what is your response for some kind of timely response? And keep in mind, again, the information we ask, the questions we ask, is based on the information you guys provide on your website regarding Red Hill facility, whether it's defueling, whether it's closure, whether it's the information, your long-term water sampling data. I don't understand why you post information on the website, and then when we ask questions, you tell us that the answer is not releasable, especially when you can't support the information we're asking for.
Yeah, I think we could go faster, fair enough. So I think I'm thinking we can do something like this. Question A is answerable. Question B is non-answerable. Question C might be, I'm not sure. I have to look into that because sometimes it's not that easy, right? I think most of the time it's going to be like the first or the second. Pretty clearly, we can either answer it or we can't. And the rare instances that we're not sure, then we owe you speed on those as well.
So should we wait 7 days?
Well, I'm not sure about a day or not day, because I'm not sure what the, you know, the volume of the questions are, right? It is a lot. So if it's taking time, it's a function of how much there is. And also it's a function of how complicated it is. We have to find the answer sometimes. It's not always in the knowledge of a single person, right? Because some of them are pretty complicated questions.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. If you tell me that the question is complicated, you're gonna need 10 days to research or to pull up the information, then that's reasonable. Just not answering us is unreasonable and it's certainly not satisfactory. So
Yeah, I think the
my
reasonable
question
is to
is still the
answer
same.
fast. Yeah, I agree. Reasonable is to answer as fast as we can. If some take longer than others, then to let you know that, you know, this one's going to take longer because it's complicated, for example.
Okay, well, we have 131 questions. Are we going to get a response on those, on whether or not we should submit the FOIA or not? I mean, my 33 questions was already responded to, and I was told to submit the FOIA request. What about the rest of them?
I think we should provide you an answer on the rest of them. We should provide you answers, and if there are some of the rest of them that we cannot, then we should tell you that as well.
Does Steve have, who has the authority to do that? Because Steve keeps saying he doesn't have authority.
I'm not sure
What
you
was
mean
your
by
plan when
authority.
you?
I'm not sure what you mean by
All right.
authority. Are you asking who is a
Okay,
FOIA
so
attorney?
no,
I didn't
who can
understand the
answer our
question.
questions? Okay, let's go back to my example. So December 4th, Steve agreed to notate on the questions that he thought he couldn't answer, whether we should submit a FOIA, whether it's an operational security issue, or whether it's a national security issue. Then on December 12th, he said he did not have the authority, because he's not a legal expert, to make these notations on the spreadsheet. In other words, to tell us that he couldn't answer the questions because of national security or operational security, or we should do a FOIA. What was your strategy here in case Steve couldn't answer a question from day one?
Okay, I see what you're saying now. Fair enough. So if we had placed that responsibility on a singular person, I think we can do better than that. So fair enough.
Is that
All
what you
of us
did?
in this.
That's what you did?
No, I'm not sure. I mean, that's what it sounds like you're saying we did. But
Well,
fair
what
enough.
did you do?
Whatever we can answer, we will answer, and whatever we cannot, we'll let you know that we cannot, without you having to get the same answer from FOIA, is what I'm offering.
When
What time
when
frame?
can you do that, Mr. O'Hennessy? When
We need a
when?
time frame. 7 days?
I cannot answer that question without seeing the extent of them. There's a lot of them, and seeing the complications of them. But if some will take longer than others, then that's reasonable for us to let you know that as well.
And Carney,
You have the questions.
just a
so there's-
clarifying question. Are you saying that you have not, in 2.5 months, seen these questions? That you're just
No,
2.5
I'm not
months
saying
later
that.
saying now that you need to review them?
No, that's not what I said. I'm saying I can understand why they're taking so long, because there are a lot of them and they're pretty complicated. And I thought we provided 85 answers before. So when I hear 33, there's a disconnect there as well that I'm not so sure about.
We'll make sure that you get the invite to the weekly spreadsheet update if you'd like to stay up to
Thank you.
date on those questions.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes we just get a runaround or a non-answer. And, you know, clearly they haven't answered the question. I think they know that. You know, like in one of Walter's questions, the answer was, we provided the public with the opportunity to ask questions at 2 town halls. Showing Hill Task Force also presented a comprehensive defueling review. It was almost like, well, why didn't you ask your questions then? That's not an answer. And then it ended with a FOIA request. They said, we need to do a FOIA request. That's in writing. Did you know that?
Yes, that's why we're having this conversation, right? I think there's a way of streamlining these and improving them as well.
Yeah, so maybe we could come up with a timeline for you folks and say, you know, we could come up and vote. The CRI could vote and say, you know, if you don't answer in 7 days, then we'll go to the next step and do a FOIA, or maybe we should do the timeline. And we can decide and propose a timeline. The 7 days. Yeah, okay. So we want 7 days. I think we're all good on 7 days. Yeah. So
I would just caution, again, a reasonable timeline, realize any answer that we can provide is gonna have to go through a SME, go through legal review before we can provide it back. So that legal review is gonna take most likely more than 7 days.
okay,
Sir,
so that's information we should know.
I am totally confused. This is information you posted on your website. So did you post classified information on the website?
I'm not talking about classified information. I'm talking about any answer that we provide, because there's ongoing litigation, has to go through legal review before it's posted and before it's sent back.
7 days.
Okay, so we would like answers in 7 days if, you know, that's our dream here.
7 calendar.
7 calendar days. That's a good one. Okay. Yes, Marty.
Wondering to what extent the issue of the tanks being considered operational, even though they are going through closure, is a factor in the information that we are receiving or not receiving, as the case may be. And I does not make sense to me why the tanks would still be considered operational when we have all agreed that they are going to be shut down. And I would like for you all to flip whatever switch needs to be flipped to make it not operational, so that we can get so that the flow of information can be a little more free-flowing.
Did anybody want to respond to that?
Take that up. We'll pass it up to the policymakers.
Thank you. Okay, so can we move on to the
But I
next
think-
agenda item? Okay, Carnegie, you have a question or something
I
to
was
say?
gonna say, I think as a general principle that, was that Marty who was speaking? As a general principle, she's right. As time goes on, the status of the different pieces that we're working with changes, and so our ability to provide information increases. I think in general, she's right. So we should remain vigilant in staying on top of that.
Great, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on to AFFF removal, and I'm gonna hand it over to Melody.
Thank you very much, Chair. All right, with regards to the AFFF removal, which we're very concerned about, we were aware from the last 2 meetings that there are 900 gallons still in the pipe, in the fire suppression pipeline. And then there is also 3,000 gallons that are in an outhouse, aside from or in addition to the 900 gallons of AFFF with PFAS. And we are also aware that there's been recent testing where 4 out of, I believe was 21 wells that are on Navy property that came back with a detect of PFAS in those wells. So our concern is, what are you folks doing to alleviate, I guess, further spills, or leaks, releases, or whatever you want to call it, because obviously there is something that is flowing through. And again, regarding the testing, are these tests being done to the water that the Navy families and civilian families may be subjected to? And so what is NAVFAC doing? What is the Navy enclosure? How is it being done, and how long will that take? And then finally, where is the AFFF with PFAS going? And then going back to, again, a subject that came up 2 meetings ago, that was excavated back on November 29th, 2022. The question was posed whether that site has been tested again, and the answer was in the negative. So since then, see, our first meeting, I guess, was in October. Has there been any testing done? I know that after the excavation was done, fill was the contaminated soil was lifted, excavated, and then land or filled, and then cement slab was on top very quickly done. And I know there was a concern that came up, I think Lacey had mentioned it today, that there was no lining that, after the contaminated soil was excavated, there was no lining at all. So while you might feel that a cover might be adequate, what about our concern is what could be going down all this time now, over a year, could be trickling down into the aquifer. So I think that's 3 questions all in one breath.
I'll try. I think there's a lot more than 3, but we'll try to. I can't speak to testing, but what I can speak to is the AFFF that's in the facility. As you've mentioned, there were 200 gallons that we removed safely back several months ago when they did the repair there near Adit 6. As you stated, there are 900 gallons remaining in the header in the facility. We are currently working with the Navy Closure Task Force on a removal plan that we will execute during the transition period, so that it's no longer in the facility. So that will be done safely in conjunction with both of the organizations, so we can provide that left suit, right suit oversight.
In January?
Not in between January and March. So we're still working through the operational development and timeline of that. That will be done with approval. So we still have to go through the approval process, but I just wanted you to know that the expectation for us internally is that we will have that completed by the end of March before the transition concludes. You also indicated that there was AFFF in another location. That is a true statement. That is in a pump house near the upper tank farm. And the reason for that is the fire suppression system for the upper tank farm. And so there is no fluorine-free foam replacement to readily drop in right now manufactured, although the military specification or the technical standard exists. We are still dependent on the commercial production facilities or manufacturers to meet that supply chain requirement, as we are also in competition with commercial organizations, other airports, et cetera, who also have that mandate to swap out the AFFF. So that's as far as the JTF Red Hill knowledge extends regarding the AFFF. So I'll pass on for some of the other questions in response.
How much fuel, how much AFFF is in the upper tank farm?
4,000 gallons.
That's the 4,000.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, there's no plan for removing that right now?
There is no plan to remove it right now because there is no other fire suppression source. We have to balance the need to get the commercial solution with fire safety for those upper tank farm fuel tanks. Those are still active tanks.
What are the protective measures for all of that stuff that you have in your system now?
So those chemicals that are in the system are fully contained. We do have protective measures. We've got barrier materials that we put on, extra containment, just to be prudent. And those are the same processes that we'll follow when we do the removal of the AFFF within the system. It is then removed in conjunction with the contractors who dispose of it in accordance with the policies and regulations for AFFF removal.
I had a follow-up question. So essentially, there's only a limited amount of manufacturers for this new, less toxic PFAS. And everyone's competing because there's a requirement upcoming to replace it. But with this facility and given its importance to national security, wouldn't the Navy be able to just get that ahead of everybody else? You know, ahead of the airport or whatever?
I appreciate your question. I'd have to, I don't know if Steve has more, that's outside of my purview.
Yeah, we are looking to prioritize the replacement here on Hawaii. When it's available, as soon as it's available, as soon as we can get it under contract, that's where we're headed.
So I have a question about the different risks. So let's say there's a worst case scenario and the tank farm, you know, goes on fire. It's a horrific fire, an awful fire. That's one scenario. The other scenario is there's an awful fire and all the PFAS is used, and the PFAS is going to flow everywhere. What has a more devastating impact on human health and the environment? Having this awful fire or having the awful fire put out with PFAS? All our information suggests that PFAS is going to be the worst possible thing. So why would you keep it around?
I don't know. I mean, there's because it's a requirement at the end of the day. We don't have.
It's a fire suppression requirement. I don't control the requirement. That is mandated at levels that are far above me, but it is a requirement. There isn't a water solution for the closed tanks. So it's either nothing or the AFFF at this point until a replacement is available.
Yeah, so nothing.
And I also don't have I don't have the authority to make those risk determination decisions. You know that.
I guess the question then is, has the Navy proceeded with getting a variance or looking at an alternative solution, or at the very least providing some kind of protection to prevent the PFAS from getting into our environment? But I guess it's a requirement that there are provisions for variances or for different kinds of alternatives. Have you approached that, or are you guys intending to approach that?
I guess I'm trying to, you're asking if. So you're asking if we're looking for an exemption to policy, essentially.
What is it, a requirement or a policy?
A requirement. You're asking for if we're gonna have an exemption or a requirement that we must fall under.
That's correct.
I can take that back and find out if anybody upstream is asking for exemptions to the firefighting requirement.
Is there an intention to do so?
And I'll ask that as well.
Thank you.
And I question, I mean, it seems a simple question, but what are you storing the AFFF in? Like, is it a metal tank? And I mean, and I think precautions, you know, that's a real concern, having the PFAS released if there is a fire, heaven forbid. And what kind of, I mean, it shouldn't be that hard to do, just simple precautions on preventing that PFAS from soaking into that ground and getting into our aquifer, because that's going to be cancer causing for our children, our grandchildren, and generations to come.
Why don't we put this on the next meeting agenda where we'll come back and brief on what the facility, the containment that's in place, so you can understand that what's it stored in, how is their secondary containment in place, should that storage tank have a crack, leak, whatever it may be, then we can kind of walk through, hey, here's how it's safeguarded, and get all those kind of questions answered at once. Does that work?
Yeah, I just got one fast question. So where are the two tanks located? At Pump House 1 or is it up at the tunnel? The AFFF?
So there is a pump up near Adit 1, and then the other pump is up by Adit 6,
And where's the tanks?
in the same pump house, up in the same locations.
So one tank at Edit 1 and one at Edit 6. Thank you.
I have a few questions. First about the PFAS that was recently discovered in the aquifer. Is it the kind of is it the long chain PFAS, the short chain PFAS? Do you know? Does anyone know what was found?
Yeah, I don't recall what kind it is per se, but we know it's unrelated to the 2022 event.
Right, so this is new or actually older PFAS that we did not expect. It's not the PFAS we were expecting, it's new PFAS.
Well, it's different.
Yeah, different. Okay. All right. My concern is that you are currently pumping and dumping water from the aquifer into the Halava, and that there may be PFAS, this new PFAS, different PFAS in that water. Are you testing at that level, at that area? Does the GAC catch this PFAS?
The GAC treatment system that we have does treat for PFAS. So that effluent that goes into the stream is cleared of PFAS material.
Okay, how often are you testing the water that's coming out of the GAC before it goes into Halava stream?
Not familiar, so I'll have to take that as an RFI.
Okay.
But that's obviously running 24/7, so it's being treated constantly.
Okay, all right. Are there other, is the program that the military is following for testing for PFAS, does that include like wastewater, for example? Like, I know, it is my understanding that wastewater from the military is reused for like agriculture, for example. Is that being tested for PFAS, do you know?
You're talking about the general distribution system wastewater collection utility. So again, I'll have to take an RFI. That's outside of my department. But we'll get an answer back to you.
Okay, so this will be a significant part of the January agenda then.
We'll answer those RFIs.
I have some questions for the EPA. Do you want to?
I just want to, I don't know if anybody can answer this right now because it's probably pending your answers for you. But when you say that they are filtering, GAC filtering the water, and that it does filter out PFAS, that is not how I understand it. Excuse me, that it can filter the longer chain PFAS, but the shorter chain PFAS tend to slip through, which makes them much more dangerous as far as human health and consuming this goes. So can anybody answer that, or is that something?
We'll have to take that as an RFI. I do want to clarify something. When you're talking about the detects, that is not in the aquifer. That was in the groundwater wells, not in the actual water source. So
Thank you for
just
that clarification.
Clarification.
I have some questions for EPA. I'm thinking Amy might be the best person to answer. I'm curious about, so the EPA has put out a new rule for PFAS. And I wanted to understand better how that is going to affect operations at Red Hill. How are we implementing this new rule?
Marty, I'm assuming you're talking about the rule, is it the drinking water or is it the cleanup rule?
I think it's the drinking water rule.
The proposed MCL for PFAS. So I don't think that the final has come out, and I'll look to my colleagues if that is correct. But when it does become finalized, it will set a specific standard for certain PFAS constituents. There is, I believe in the proposed rule, there is a date set by which drinking water systems will need to comply with this new MCL. That is a few years down. So it allows for opportunity to put in treatment if treatment is needed. So that has not been finalized yet. So we will need to wait until it's finalized to really know what specifically the rule will say.
Okay, thank you. As a follow-up question, has the EPA required the Navy to test for PFAS on Oahu?
So that's a complicated question. So there's drinking water sampling. And under the for the drinking water program, there is a requirement to test for certain constituents that aren't currently regulated. And some of those constituents are PFAS chemicals. And in fact, right now we're in the process of doing those types of sampling for certain size drinking water systems. And so PFAS is being sampled from a variety of drinking water systems, including Pearl Harbor, also Board of Water Supply as well. And so those are in the process of being done, and the year and the time of year that that's being done is there's a set schedule on when they have to be done, and those would be current drinking water wells.
Okay, if I would like to see the EPA require the military to test all monitoring wells for PFAS. Like, I don't know what needs to be changed to make that happen, but I would like the standard operating procedure to be that PFAS is just like a thing we monitor for everywhere, only because it is turning out to be far more pervasive than we anticipated. And my concern is that it is, greatly in our water now, and we aren't paying attention. So I'm advocating to you to please help see if we can make that happen. Thank you.
Yes, Marty, I'd like to call on my colleague Allison, who may have more to provide on this.
Thank you, Amy. Hi, Marty. So Amy spoke about the sampling in drinking water. So I wanted to add about what EPA and DOH are requiring the Navy to do in terms of sampling in the groundwater. So the regulatory agencies are expecting a work plan from the Navy on its Red Hill PFAS investigation, which is part of the larger Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam PFAS investigation that they're doing. And in advance of this investigation, we thought it was important to know what was in the groundwater monitoring wells right now. So we did request an initial baseline sampling for PFAS from all the Red Hill groundwater wells. Just last week, we had a meeting with the Navy to understand the schedule for when they're going to be submitting this work plan. We understand we're going to be getting it sometime next year. And it's very important that they look at the baseline sampling and where it shows that there were indications of PFAS in the groundwater, and have that inform the full investigation that they will be doing.
Thank you very much for that, Allison. Sometime next year, that is a long time. Could we say like first quarter of next year? Like, can we put some urgency on that, please?
This is where I can probably help.
Great.
The Navy has been investigating PFAS for some time. There is, and this is occurring under the Circular program. It's not sorry, again, is that better? Okay. This is not occurring under an issue that's for the consent order. This is something that's been going on for quite some time prior to this. The first stage of these investigations is what's known as a preliminary assessment site investigation. And these reports are available when they are published. They are made available publicly. There's nothing that's being placed anywhere where anyone can get to it. There are restoration advisory boards, and I understand there was a discussion on restoration advisory boards as well, where these things are discussed publicly as well. There's another meeting similar to this meeting where these topics are discussed, and we welcome the public's involvement in that process, because this is an open, public-facing a process to find, investigate, and remediate these sorts of sites. So the work is ongoing. Any better there? That's a real close microphone, sorry. So the circle investigative process is not the fastest. It is, however, a collaborative process that involves both the Department of Health, the Environmental Protection Agency. All of the testing plans go through a rigorous process where they are approved. There's discussions with regulators, making sure that we're testing the right things in the right places and at the right times, the right frequencies, and so forth. The analyses go to EPA certified labs. There's validation that goes into this. The work plans are not just I need you to go and sample this well. There's a lot of steps that go into it so that you're collecting, generating, analyzing data that can represent truly what is in the groundwater, and it is a defensible product. So I would welcome folks to participate in that other meeting process for the CERCLA investigation. I know that it is yet another meeting. However, that is truly where that expertise, the subject matter experts that are addressing this topic are a part of a different program and different area that addresses this.
Could you please send us the information about the RAB? So you've done a preliminary site assessment under CERCLA for PFAS on Oahu.
Yep.
When did that
The
happen?
PA, I believe, is being published this year. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact date. The SI is coming very, very soon after that. The preliminary assessment looks at all places where PFAS may have been used, released. It's a list of where you should go look. The site assessment follows on after that and goes to take samples looking for presence or absence. And then there is a remedial investigation. There's an entire chain of events that happens leading to remediation and, if necessary, long-term monitoring.
Yes, I'd like to be involved in that process. Please share that information.
We'll absolutely
Thank
pass that on.
And Marty, if I could add one thing to what Steve had just laid out. We did urge the Navy that of all the different areas of concern that they're looking at in the Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam PFAS investigation, that they look at Red Hill first.
That is one of the first areas we are looking at as well. There is a remedial investigation that's the effort that Allison is speaking of. That is the next step after a site investigation where you have presence or absence. There was obviously a release and a response. We know it's there. We're moving on.
Yeah, I'd like to make a comment. This comment I did raise at the first CRI meeting. I mean, how do we reconcile between the interim MCLs and the DOH is increasing in its EALs? So, for example, the interim under EPA for PFOA is 0.004 parts per trillion. However, the Department of Health just increased it for the state to 12 parts per trillion. And in California, it's well documented that 1.1 part per trillion is enough to cause pancreatic cancer. So we've got a conflict here, but we have EPA, who supposedly would be under the supremacy clause, should take over and be more presidential than the DOH. However, I don't see that happening. And I believe you folks, the military, is basing your detect, non-detect based on the higher amount, which is that of the DOH, which is currently 3,000 times more, 3,000 times more than what EPA is suggesting is safe. And I remember one of your town halls when you had recently, November 29, 2022, regarding the spill. And the answer we got was, well, it was a non-detect according to the EALs, therefore we won't tell you what it is. Well, how do you reconcile with that? If you don't tell us what it is, however, across the nation, other states, there's precedents, regardless of what it is bad. This is liquid cancer. This is liquid cancer. It's out there. It's documented. It's historical. And yet, I don't know why our levels are so high, which then gives you an out, which doesn't make sense when we've got people who are dying of pancreatic cancer. Okay, then PFOS. According to the EPA's interim levels now, it's 0.02. The DOH in April of this year increased it almost 100% to 7.7 parts per trillion. That is 385 times more than what's recommended by the EPA. Why can't the EPA unify the standards so we don't have this yo-yo and unreasonably subjecting the public and the environment of these known hazardous carcinogens? Why is that? And if they don't, why can't you, in your moral and good faith obligation, say, oh, wait a minute, we will adhere to what the EPA has to say, regardless of what DOH has to say. Care for the environment, care for the people. Okay, the community is the host. You folks are visitors. You know, you're not supposed to come, cause damage and harm, leave it as you've left it, full of toxins and poisons and military debris. And look at Pohakaloa. And now you're asking for a renewal of the lease? I mean, we in the CRI are strongly against $1 for 65 years of contaminants and then no ability for especially the Native Hawaiians to do their spiritual practicing. And anyway, I mean, you folks, I might say, we made a lot of noise. We've all made a lot of noise as a community. But the end result is that this would not have happened unless you folks agreed to let it happen. Red Hill wouldn't have closed otherwise. You folks, we are subject to your goodwill. Please send back goodwill, okay? Thank you.
Melody, if I
Thank you,
may,
Melody.
and just to follow up
Mandy.
on, just to follow up on Marty's question, the point she raised about the new rule to the EPA, and also to piggyback on what Melody is saying. So not only has the Navy come, occupied the land, poisoned the land and the people, but then they've also claimed discretion and immunity over and over as an out, as Melody mentioned, to not take care of the land or its people. And so obviously as an impacted family, I have grave concern with that. And as a Native Hawaiian, I can even imagine the concern about that, especially when you're talking about leases being renewed in good faith. 2 years later, the Navy is now claiming we didn't have to test these samples because we used discretion under the discretionary clause. We don't have to remediate the homes because we're immune and we have discretion. So my question is to Amy, when this new rule is finally enforced, does the Navy still continue to be immune and apply discretion when it comes to things like PFAS or drinking water standards or remediation or poisoning their own people and turning a blind eye to people still being sick today? Do these new rules apply to them and are they enforceable?
Of course, the rules are enforceable against Anybody who is running a drinking water system. There is additional rules that are in the process of being passed concerning cleanup. And those requirements will be enforced as well.
Does discretionary function trump those rules, Amy?
We believe in that any entity that needs to provide drinking water that contaminates the land, doesn't matter if they are a government agency, they need to comply with environmental regulations.
Thank you so much for clarifying that.
Thank you, Amy.
Can I ask just one really quick question? Ben,
Sure.
did you find the answer on your website?
At a whole, sorry, I did not look on the website. I
You,
don't
you were
see it.
looking at it.
I was looking at something else.
You were pretending to look at a
Apparent list.
website?
A parent list of analytes. So I will take that because it's unfamiliar to me. I will take it for an RFI and I'll provide you a response.
Can you imagine how it is for the public to get through that if you can't even figure it out?
Understand your frustration. There is a tutorial on the website that explains how to
You had time
query.
to take it. You could have taken it right now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I just want to just give everybody a heads up on the time. So we are an hour and 22 minutes in, and I do want to reserve time for the public and not take that part away. That's not negotiable. So I want to just make everyone aware of that time. Are we done with PFAS, or are we we have more questions or concerns? Okay. Okay, I mean, we're not done with PFAS, but we're gonna follow up, and thank you everyone for your questions. So Halava
ask a-
Shaft is
can
the
I ask a
next
question?
item.
Can I ask a question about PFAS?
Sure, go ahead.
So, we got this media release from the Navy on November 28th regarding PFAS being detected. And it seems to be a document dump because if you look on the page that it's accessed, there's 74 pages of data with about 10 lab reports on each. So I'm curious whether either the EPA or whether the Navy has looked at the data and can summarize it for us. For example, what was the highest level of PFAS detected and where? Is that anything the Navy or the EPA can tell us?
Are you folks aware of the levels, and are you able to answer Kimo's question?
We do have PFAS sampling data results posted to the website. We had an additional report or another round of samples that was recently posted to the website that reflects the levels at each of the monitoring wells that were sampled. I would have to provide a summary of what that is but we do know that where we expect to find some items in the groundwater, and that's why we are pursuing the groundwater monitoring well network to characterize, and that's part of the site assessment and the overall long-term remediation plan to clean up Red Hill.
So actually, one would not expect to find PFAS in our groundwater. That's absolutely unexpected. There's only one source of the PFAS, and that's from the military. But your press release says 4 of these 21 groundwater monitoring wells showed exceedances. Can you tell us how far, what was the exceedance level? How far were the levels exceeded? What were the numbers?
So the limit is 7.69 parts per trillion, I believe. And the values were ranging for those 4, 9 to, I believe, 14 for those 4 monitoring wells Several of them are right on the border of the Red Hill facility.
The border of the facility and what? What's on the other side of the border?
There is an industrial park nearby. And it is somewhat in the vicinity of the quarry. So we will use that information in the overall assessment as we characterize contamination at the site.
That was very helpful. Thank you.
One other note, PFAS compounds are found in a great number of products, manufacturing processes. If you can find them in fast food wrappers, pizza boxes, stain resistant clothing, Teflon tape, if you've done plumbing, they are incorporated into a vast number of products. It's just not a military use. So it is a problem that exists in a lot of different places. There is a reason that we are looking for PFAS from our uses of it, but that is not the only exclusive use of PFAS compounds.
I think PFAS is an excellent example of dual use.
Okay, thank you. So we're gonna head on to Halava Shaft. I think this is a really important topic. There are concerns that there are plans to reopen the shaft. And so I'll just hand it over to Lacey, who will be sharing or asking some questions.
Okay, so there was an article recently in the Star Advertiser talking about the plans to potentially reopen Halava Shaft. And I don't understand how that could be in a discussion when the public is not aware of the boundaries of the fuel plume. So my first question is, can anyone tell us where are the boundaries of the fuel plume and what contaminants are being tested? And just a little context, the reason why I'm asking that is because if we don't know where those boundaries are, then why are we discussing opening the Halava Shaft? Opening it could make it move closer to that shaft. If we don't understand what contaminants are present, how many feet per day they're moving, and how many feet away the nearest well is, whether it's a military well or a civilian well, whether it's the Halava Shaft or another one, if you don't know or don't share with the public, because we don't know, maybe it's known, that's my first question, is it known where the boundaries of the fuel plume are?
So hopefully I'll be succinct in my answer. That's part of the site assessment, site assessment plan is to determine, right, categorize the site and figure out where do we believe the contaminant is and where is it moving, right? The second piece is the Halava Shaft, that's BWS's decision. We have asked them for sampling data. We've asked them for their data on that site, and they have not shared that with us. So I can't speak to, again, they shut that down in an abundance of caution. I can't speak to why they're reconsidering reopening it, whether they're reconsidering opening it. They would need to speak to that Board of Water Supply.
I
Ernie
don't
has
think
his
the
hand
Board of
up.
Water Supply wants to read. He does not want there. Thank God. Thank you.
Ernie has his hand up. Yep.
Thank you, Ernie. Could you please clarify things?
Somebody needs to unmute me. Me again. I don't have control over this. Can you folks hear me?
Yes, you're unmuted.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dominique. Yeah, actually that Star Advertiser editorial was referencing a letter that was issued, a press release regarding Halava Shaft reopening. And that was generated by the Department of Health. But Lacey, I am with you. Our position is not to reopen Halava Shaft. That was implied in the letter by suggestion that if we seem to say, and we're meeting with the health department tomorrow and EPA to get clarification, that if you were to turn it on and start to pump it, and if contamination, and they weren't specific on the contaminant, reach a unsafe level, then money would be available through the bipartisan infrastructure law, or BIL, through the state revolving loan fund that's with the Department of Health and EPA. But I'll tell you, Lacey, my position is not to turn it on. I agree with you that the nature and extent or the characterization of the magnitude and the location and the movement of the contamination emanating out of Red Hill is still unknown. There's I think about maybe half the valley that is like a big question mark. We don't have any data or information coming out of almost like half of Jalapa Valley. So we're going to be talking to the Department of Health and EPA tomorrow to understand their recommendation or suggestion there. So maybe a question, if I know that there's EPA representatives on the 2015 AOC. I guess my question is, 2015 AOC is the document that I think EPA and Department of Health are pointing toward that would spell out the requirements of the remedial or the investigation for site characterization, groundwater modeling, etc. And I guess my question is, I only see right now a 2015 version, and the 2015 AOC was actually designed to try to keep the tanks in operation for another 30 plus years. Has there been progress toward formal agreement with the Navy, EPA, and Department of Health on revisions to the 2015 AOC that pertain to groundwater investigation, groundwater modeling, remediation?
Can someone answer that? Is that directed toward Carnegie or Steve? Can you answer, or?
Amy?
Oh, the EPA, okay.
I can answer for the EPA. So we are actively working, EPA and DOH, on the revisions needed to an environmental statement of work that's up to date, that takes into account the current status of the facility and its plans to be closed, and spells out the requirements for site assessment to identify where there have been previous impacts from the UST facility, site investigation of any releases that are identified, and the remediation to make sure there isn't risk to the environment and human health for the entire facility. So we're looking at this, again, with the perspective of closure and the comprehensive site assessment that Navy needs to do. So this is something that's in progress right now.
So I thank you, Allison, and I think I have concerns when you reference the entire facility, because the Red Hill fuel tanks, the facility and its lands there, the problems are way beyond the boundaries of the property and the facility. This is a community resource impact that is broader, and it is something that is moving with the groundwater. We don't know exactly where. So this, whatever agreements, we really need to hold the Navy accountable to contamination that's moved outside of their property.
So I'm kind of I'd like to get some clarification. I mean, clearly the governor is pressing Ernie to open Halava Shaft, but I find it hard to believe that the EPA is as well. Is that the governor's spin, or Amy, is somebody at EPA pushing to open Halava Shaft and get this money spent? Because that just seems inconsistent with your guys' position, knowing that you guys don't know where the contamination is. You guys care about the environment and health. Why would you guys be pushing to open Halava Shaft?
Thank you, Amy. Can you answer that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the letter that came out from the Department of Health. We recently had a conversation, our water division has had a conversation As you're aware, there is a lot of money available to make investments in both wastewater and drinking water. And the money funnels from EPA to the Department of Health. We look to the Department of Health as the primacy agency to be identifying key projects to place this money and invest that will be of the greatest benefit for the state. It sounds like our colleagues in the Water Division will be meeting with the Board of Water Supply. And of course, we work as a team. Our Water Division colleagues are on the team that works with our remediation team, our enforcement team, and we try to look at everything holistically.
So great, maybe you can have a Microsoft Teams meeting and talk to those folks about why it's a bad idea. I know they want to funnel this money as quickly as possible that Congress has allocated, but maybe let them know that allocating it to Halava shaft pumping is an environmental disaster. It's just crazy to think that someone in some other division there at EPA is thinking, oh yeah, we can spend this money this way, but that just puts our water at greater risk. And I hope you communicate to the rest of the team that.
Thank you, Kimo.
Thank you, Ernie, Amy.
Ditto that 110%. Thank you.
And Ernie, nice haircut, by the way.
Oh yeah. I don't know why it looks shorter in this with the iPad. So thank you. My wife will be happy.
Okay, so are we done with the Halava shaft? Okay, so we are going to get down to the public questions, or did we want to? Are we okay with that? Okay, so we're gonna skip over because we're gonna get a really good update in January, right? Hopefully, yeah, the next meeting. So our next meeting will be in January. And when I guess we should be in, are we in phase 2 now, or we're still in phase 1? Or defueling, sorry. What phase are we in? Sorry. Oh, sorry. I'm so sorry. No. That
We have so many phases.
I know, I'm just like.
No, us currently as well. So we expect to be done with the defueling phase of what is the two-part, the defueling and closure phases to get to defueled. So we will be done with the defueling part of that, and then transitioning and working through residual fuel, and then setting the conditions for the Navy Closure Task Force to then continue with the long-term closure, demolition, tank cleaning, and the environmental remediation aspect. So we're in the defueling phase 5, which will close out the defueling aspect of this as they then transition into the longer-term closure phase.
Does anybody have any questions about defueling right now that we need? Or do we want to just open it up to the public already?
I do have
Okay,
one
let's open it
really
up
quick
to the public.
question
Sure, Mandy.
related to defueling. And I'd like to note that this is my 18th time in a public setting asking, do we have an update from the Secretary of Defense on where we're at with hazardous duty pay for the service members who are working at Red Hill or who are part of flushing operations?
Yeah, she did ask that question last time. So is there an update on that hazard pay?
16 times before that, Leilani.
Yeah.
I mean, I can just tell you that I know Adam, I was witness to Adam over that passing that request up the chain. Again, that's a policy question in DC, and ultimately, right, we're waiting on them to make a determination or change their current determination.
And my last question is, I just want to get clarity because we kind of breezed over it earlier. There continues to be two narratives. One, there's a sense of urgency. Two, from the Navy, people's health, the health of our people and their families are our top priority. But I would submit to you that it has been 2 years, and what we have seen from the Navy as impacted families are two things. One, the development of an administrative registry that does not include civilian personnel or military dependents. And two, the implementation of the Red Hill Clinic, which every person on here knows has been a complete bust. However, the impacted families and the communities continue to ask for reasons as to why we keep getting sick. There are still sheens. In fact, there are 3 family members on this Zoom tonight who were part of having the intestinal fortitude to come forward and show rashes and all of those things, right? Just a month or 2 ago. Okay. And so my question is, and they're common sense, but like people have asked about like testing. And I know that testing in the pipes, I know that's being talked about, right? But we still don't have an answer on that. Putting air quality monitors in people's homes to monitor like things like vapor intrusion from, remember those times when you just flushed contaminated water into our yards and just drained our hot water heaters into our yards. And there's not been any hot water heaters replaced, and there's not been any air quality monitors put into homes. And so when you say that people's health are our greatest, most top priority, we have denied testing the pipes. We have denied replacing hot water heaters. We have denied air quality in people's homes. Those are things that actually impact human health and have the ability to. And I would ask, and I hope that she's on, I don't know if she's on here, but when Rochelle Dietz, part of this, you guys came to her house a number of times over a month, and you didn't offer her clean water. And her house was only tested for chlorine and TPH. Have you thought maybe we should replace Rochelle Dietz's hot water heater? Maybe, let's just see. She has a sheet every morning that she wakes up, and she has a rash on her body every time that she showers her children in hot water, but you're not testing. So could a simple fix with all the money that we are allocating to places like Ukraine, and more was just talked about yesterday in the news, is it really, do you have to dig that deep in the DoD's budget to replace the hot water heater and see if that's a simple fix for why these people are getting rashes or not? I'd ask that when you say that people are your number one priority, that you actually implement things that actually impact people. We don't need an administrative registry, and no one's going to your Red Hill Clinic. Let's look at what's going on in these people's individual homes and fix it immediately with a sense of urgency, not we're still waiting 2 years later. Thank you.
Thank you, Mandy. Did you guys want to respond to that? That she makes really good points about just replacing the water heater, even filtration systems in these homes. It's been ongoing. Some of them have been living 2 years without being able to bathe in their water or drink their water, not trusting it. Is there anything you could do in the urgency wise? Do you guys have the capacity to do that soon? To make some changes for the health and welfare of the families still on the Navy water system.
So again, we're doing the premise plumbing investigation. And we're gonna trust the data as it comes back and take action as appropriate based upon what the science tells us. So far, those results have come back right within state drinking water standards.
All right. If you can't tell, I'm really holding back. Okay, so let me explain to you what you should already know. The military families live in your housing, the housing that you guys provide on land that's already contaminated. They're exposed to hazardous substances all over the place on all the bases. So when you look at only water, because when you look at the total petroleum hydrocarbons, what are the target organs? When we look at what people drink, what they breathe, what gets on their skin? What are the target organs? Respiratory tract, GI tract, liver, kidney. What is it also for this other stuff that they live on? So in their house, what is in their house? You're only looking for one thing. Get a toxicologist in there, get the right people in there to go look at all of the hazardous substances, not only in their house, but around their house. So please, Mandy brings up this point all the time. Look at people's health. They're human beings, they're your families, your children. They affect our future and our families and our children.
Thank you, Walter. And now I just want to now move to public questions. Since we have 15 minutes, we'll start with some questions in-house first, and then we'll go on Zoom. Thank you. Oh, Susan, go ahead, Susan. Susan, in the interest of time too, we have a lot of people that want to ask questions, and Madison will be handing out the mic. Thank you.
Oh, I don't want you to hold it. Okay, because I'm going to be moving back and forth. Okay, I've been collecting data since I heard about the complaints coming in October. And because I'm a data person and I use your wonderful Safe Waters system to produce the data that I present to you. So during the time, Iroquois Point, I'm going to use these zones, A3, D2, D3 at H1, F2, and F1, I'll have exceedances, no, detections of petroleum diesel. These are all the wells that have also, these are exceedances of petroleum diesel, okay? So these are showing the dates. I have no access to what dates the customer complaints were coming in. I only use the data. So I would presume that these dates probably are related to when the complaints came in, but I did not have that data. So I was talking to Susan about how I see patterns, and this is the pattern for A3. Yeah. And they're actually showing the streets that are getting hit by petroleum, hydrocarbons, diesel. Now, what I've done there is I've also annotated, this is for me. You guys can go into your own little joint base Safe Waters and do the same thing. But these are the homes. I had no access to what homes were calling in complaints, so I'll just read a few and maybe somebody might nod. Heron Avenue, Iroquois Point. Iroquois Avenue, Iroquois Point. Do you know, are you hearing anything that sounds familiar? So now,
Yes,
Iroquois Point.
it's on the Navy waterline. Pavilion, but on the Navy waterline.
So when they were calling in complaints, I found out where the complaints were coming from and when they were coming from. The last time that I presented the idea, I said, could you go and get a map and use push pins, which I didn't think anybody was going to do. So I did my own little thing. This is Hickam. All those yellow things right there are fire hydrants. Where do the fire hydrants get their water from? I'll ask you that later. Again, we're at Earhart now. And the reason I pulled these specific zones was because they had the most hits. All the zones had something, but these had the most hits. All the yellow, again, are fire hydrants. And then I've clustered the addresses so that, we have Chester Nimitz Elementary School, wonderful. And School Age Center, another thing that's really wonderful. Ohana Nui Circle, lots of hits there. Then we go to the NEX Mauna Loa Terrace, which is right, where's F1? Right here. And you're gonna see the clusters of the dates. So I found that was important also, but I also found out that as I was looking at the patterns, I was also seeing patterns of homes. These still are all fire hydrants. That question is going to come up at the end. And F2. Catlin Park. All fire hydrants. You're going to ask me what the hell is what is it about fire hydrants? Okay. And this is just a number of homes. Right here is a histogram of the number of fire hydrants and how they space out over time. There's 62 fire hydrants that have been hit with petroleum hydrocarbon D. Now there's one last slide. Guayaba shaft. I have to show this one. Isn't it beautiful? Isn't it beautiful? Did I mark anything? No petroleum. No petroleum hydrocarbons D. It's the source shaft for all of those homes, zones that I just showed you. The source shaft. I don't know if Ernie's still on, but he saw this presentation a couple of weeks ago. So how do the homes get detections, petroleum hydrocarbon diesel, when the shaft is clean? Where is the petroleum coming from? Any answers? Or are you going to go back and do your homework? This is disgusting. I shouldn't have to do this crap because I'm doing it for these guys. They don't have the time to do all of this. I love to look at data. So I bring it to them. I bring it to Lacey so that she can start feeling a little bit better about what she's finding out from complaints. But it's disgusting that if Guayaba shaft is so clean, this is from Safe Waters Joint Base Pearl Harbor, then how the hell are these homes getting petroleum diesel detections?
Can you ask someone
Not
with a
you, ma'am.
mic to speak up a little bit louder because we here on Zoom can't hear the response?
Oh, you want me to hear it louder?
All I hear is
I'm
crickets,
sorry.
Susan, but I really appreciate it.
Oh, boy. Let's just put it this way, Mandy. Can you hear me now?
No. I can hear you. I was just asking if anyone had a response, because if so, we weren't able
Oh,
to hear
no.
here on Zoom.
How does this shaft be clean and the homes have detections of petroleum diesel, regardless if they exceed the Board of Water Supplies, EALs? These are clusters of homes. They're not just one home. They're on the same street. So they could be a circle. I can't tell you that because nobody came up with the map. Thank you, Admiral Barnett and Captain Sullivan. Okay. I'm off my horse. Do you have any questions, you guys?
Thank you, Susan, for that research. I want copies of everything.
So
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
but
you so
yeah,
much, Susan.
Yeah, and Ben's gonna respond.
I'm good. Just want to make sure you had shared what you wanted to share before responding. But do understand, we know the Wyava drinking water source, which is the only source right now for our joint base water system, distribution system. the Red Hill shaft and the other shaft at Navy Halava are both secured. They're not supplying water into the distribution system. We do have, as you've communicated there, that we have TPH detections across the distribution system in different zones. Absolutely acknowledging that the detection levels that we do meet the incident specific parameters for the Red Hill incident. The conclusion that it's great to validate that the drinking water source is pure and that whatever analytes that are being detected are collected throughout the distribution system. TPH can be one of many materials, man-made materials, plastics, and so on. We have done advanced analysis. To validate whether or not it is JP5 or fuel related.
Please stop, okay, because you're just take away the microphone. I used to say, give them the mic and they'll keep on talking, but right now I don't want to have anything trying to explain this away. This is not going to get explained away. And actually, you made me feel very little by all the time I spent doing this. I'm not going to take that crap from you, okay? I spent hours, Susan knows, weeks pulling this data, verifying, validating it, looking at it. Just because Waiava shaft, and you're all happy about that, oh, there's no contaminants. Where the hell are the contaminants coming from? That people are drinking and calling the rapid response team, who turns up and samples their data and tells them their water is fine. And if I give Lacey all of these addresses, she's going to tell me. These addresses are the ones that were the complaints that came in and people were told your water is safe. Do you want to live in one of those addresses? Would you want to live in one of those addresses? Because we can put you in there. There's no hard route to do this thing. And I may sound cocky, but I'm tired of hearing excuses when we know that your data, that's not very easy to manipulate, it takes me hours, your data shows this information. Not my data. Joint Base Pearl Harbor safe waters. Change it to unsafe waters.
Yes.
I want to ask a follow-up. Did you do this type of analysis, and what questions did you come up with?
So Ben's team has done in-depth analysis, and if you let him finish his answer, I'm sure he would have got into this. You can call it gaslighting, but we're trying to give you scientific facts of what we're finding. And if you don't want to hear that, that's fine, but you could treat him with a little more respect and dignity than you just did.
Can you
Okay.
give me an
With all due respect, please do not talk to civilians and the public who have spent adequate amount of time doing your job and your research. Do not speak to our constituents and our community members in that way, respectfully, sir. And he was gaslighting her, and I also won't allow it. Thank you.
So is there another source of the contamination besides the well that you have deemed safe? And what have you done?
Can someone give this gentleman a mic?
No. What is your, did you come to this question? Did you come to this question? If you say the well is safe and that is the only place the water is coming from for these homes, didn't you ask yourself the question why? And don't tell me all the protocol you're already doing. What are you doing in addition to investigate how this is possible?
we're continuing to look at the data right now, ma'am, with working with our contractor that's doing the sampling and data collection and analysis.
Okay, I think this is a dead end. Oh, yeah, so, yes, can we have, can you say your name and then ask your question? Thank you. Put your mic on.
I have a question for the EPA and also for Ernie Lau, if you don't mind answering, and the Navy also. In November 2021, there was this blast and jet fuel got in the water. Do you have any doubt that there was enough jet fuel at the time to make people who are on the water line sick, just in the short term?
Is anyone gonna answer that from E EPA?
This is Amy, and you know, so we do know that there was jet fuel in the drinking water system and that it made people sick.
Is that also the Navy's position? And Ernie Lau, is that also your understanding?
Ernie's still muted. Can someone unmute him?
Dominique? Thank you. This is what I know from the test results that I think the Navy and also the Department of Health conducted in December of 2021, where it went into the Navy's drinking water source, Red Hill Shaft. And they sent divers in there to try to skim off fuel. There was actually fuel floating on the water in their drinking water source, which I assume was pumping and had been the source of the contamination that got into the water system serving Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. And the levels of some of those test results, I think they were like in the 100,000 parts per billion for TPH. The one thing that is interesting is they weren't just picking up TPHD, which might be an indicator of jet fuel or JP5. They were getting TPHO, oil, also gasoline. Remember, this facility has been around for 80 years and there's been leaks. And now I think the latest estimates may be on the order close to 2 million gallons of fuels of various types. And whatever happened that led to the contamination of Red Hill Shaft might have mobilized past fuels that were hung up in the vadose zone, the unsaturated zone above the aquifer, and now got into the groundwater and into their water system. So, that's kind of my thoughts on that. I hope I answered your question.
So do you have any doubt, Mr. Lau, that people got sick in November and December of 2021 because of the contamination you just described?
You know, ma'am, I watched the news stories and the sad stories of people, even some pets died from it. And I also look at the CDC's investigation, the Agency for Toxic Disease Registry, and it seems pretty clear. I think they mentioned 6,700 people sought medical attention, maybe 9,000 households might have been impacted. And I, I was just at Punahou School just this week, along with General Okamura from the Joint Task Force. And one of the students actually said he was one of the impacted families at Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. He spent 101 days in a hotel in Waikiki because of that. So, ma'am, I would say absolutely yes.
Can the Navy answer the same question, please?
Again, at the risk of getting absolutely murdered on the walk out of here, the Navy's not willing to comment on things that have been involved in ongoing litigation.
So my next question then is, thousands of people are still sick. And I have this question for the EPA first, and then for Mr. Lau, because it sounds like the Navy's not going to answer. Is it your view, Ms. Miller, that the people who are sick now, who believe that they're sick because of the contamination, are somatic? Or are at least some of them having real symptoms from their exposure?
when people bring to us concerns and show us that they have symptoms, I've seen the pictures of rashes, those are real. And I want to figure out if there is a relationship with the drinking water. These are the similar symptoms that people had. And so it is of concern. And we are working with the Navy to do more investigation, not just samples, but, you know, looking at sources, potential sources, and really trying to track down what is causing these symptoms.
You answered a really good question. It wasn't the question that I meant to ask, but it was a
Oh.
great answer. The question that I meant to ask was, people who were there in November and December of 2021 are still reporting symptoms. Do you think that their symptoms are just somatic? Is it just in their head? Or do you think that the fuel that they were exposed to that Mr. Lau just described could be causing the symptoms that they have today?
I am not a doctor, so I wouldn't be able to be able to know if symptoms, but I do know that there was jet fuel in the drinking water and that people had symptoms that are a result of having drunk jet fuel in drinking water.
Mr. Lau, do you have any thoughts about whether people's symptoms that they're reporting today are somatic and in their head, or if they're real or could be the result of the contamination in November and December of 2021?
I want to be careful because like Amy, I'm not a medical doctor, I'm an engineer, so just a plain old civil engineer. Looking at what people are still complaining about, it looks very similar to what they experienced back in 2021. But again, I'm not a physician. Maybe I can comment on something else, if you don't mind. You know, Susan Piccola Davis worked really hard to crunch the data from the Navy Safe Waters website. And I really appreciate that because it shows me that there's still petroleum hydrocarbons of various types being detected in the water system of Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam, even though they're not on a source that's supposedly free of TPH or petroleum hydrocarbons. We've always we've expressed that concern from the very beginning of learning about this Red Hill crisis. This is that petroleum, once it gets into a water system, has a tendency to stay within the water system, to stick to things. You know, it's like my deputy Aaron Kawata uses the analogy of a salad bowl. I mean, you have vinaigrette in there and you serve your salad, and you just clean it with plain old water and try to get rid of that slippery feel on the inside of that salad bowl. You have to use soap to clean it out, and warm water. My experience has been that petroleum is something you don't want to expose plastics to, because they can actually get absorbed into the plastic. And I had an example of that happen on Kauai. But that's why we're trying to be very careful in areas of known ground contamination with petroleum hydrocarbons, to try to stay away from use of plastics in like plastic pipe.
Well, I want to thank you, Mr. Lau, and for the committee and the community. I'm thankful to be here today and thankful to the Navy. I want to point out that I represent 7,000 people who were affected, as you know.
You looked familiar.
Thousands of them are still sick because of their exposure. And I want to make it really clear that the Navy's position in the litigation is that even the short-term symptoms were somatic. I want to just make that really clear. That's true. The Navy is claiming in the case that even the short-term symptoms were in their head.
And so, you know, we can't be divorced from reality. And the gaslighting that happens is real. It's when something is true and we say it's not true. And so I appreciate that there's ongoing litigation, but that shouldn't prevent you from just speaking the truth. Like that you couldn't answer questions because it had to go through legal review. What kind of answers is that? People need real answers and they need the doctors and the experts to speak the truth. And so I appreciate the EPA and I appreciate Mr. Lau and all the others who are speaking truth because it matters, and it matters to the 7,000 people who I represent and the thousands of others who were on that water line and drank water that the Navy knew at the time was contaminated. So thank you for the work that you're doing, and we're gonna continue to speak truth and bring accountability.
Thank you, Katrina.
Thank you. Okay, so I just wanna just Mark Williams, your comment about being murdered, getting out of here. No one's gonna hurt you. You know, this is this is just a public discussion and we appreciate everyone being here. And we're a little over the time, but I wanted to say if we could have Chair Akaka, she's been on waiting patiently to ask a question and she's on Zoom. If we could have her ask the question that she had. Thank you so much.
Mahalo nui, he alani. I have many reflections as this discussion has gone on, as well as from the start of all of this. And, you know, we are all seeking peace of mind here. And one of my first questions is, would you yourself drink and bathe in this water? Would you serve or bathe your own family with this water? Your grandmother, your grandfather, your father, your mother, your spouse, or your newborn? And what reparations will be done and by when? And for context, there is a cost to our people's health, a cost to the use of water, the cost of it going up, a cost to the cleanliness of our waters generations going forward in our water table. Historically, the Department of Defense, the military, the Navy have not been good stewards of our lands and waters. I say this as a Native Hawaiian. Known to create such devastation without a thorough cleanup. Our beloved island, Kaho'olawe, as an example, yet to be properly cared for. Again, what reparations will be done and by when? What efforts will be taken to improve this mistrust that we have? There is historically too much red tape to go forward productively and find solutions to heal the health of our service members, families, and our communities affected. And if you are not able to answer these questions now, my questions and the questions of others, can you please come back to the next meeting with these answers? And also, if I may, a recommendation going forward, to have those with authorization to speak, legal counsel, to have present to answer these questions. I also and humbly ask that when you are asked and are answering these questions to those affected, to see each person as though they are your own grandparent and your own child that is affected by this. Mahalo.
Thank you, Trustee Akaka. I feel the same way, ditto. And I don't, you know, I loved what you said about your recommendation, you know, look at these people who are living on the Navy water distribution system as your own family. Would you want that for your family? You know, is that a life you would want, you know, a relative to live? So is there, oh, Kaimo, can we end with Kaimo? And I think then we're done with time. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, we'll do Dave after Kaimo. Thank you, Kaimo. Can we get the mic for Kaimo?
Aloha mai, ovo Kaimo. I'm Kaimo. I am a resident of Moanalua Valley.
Turn this one down.
Okay, my Kai. Is this my Kai? Can everyone hear me? Okay, aloha. I am Kaimo. I am a resident, the first house of Moanalua Valley. I look and breathe kapukaki every day. Night, moonlight, sunlight, sunset every moment of the day. It is so sacred to our valley, both on the Halawa. It's the ridge that connects Halawa, Moanalua Valley, and in it, ola I ka ha, ola I ka wai, ola I ka I. Life from above, below, where the wai lives. Michelle, I cannot say much more than your job that you have done to defuel, because when I found out the millions of gallons in that kapukaki that is inches away from where I live, brought so much anxiety. I heard the valley's the only way we found out was because of the mai that has caused. So I appreciate all the good efforts that you have done. Excellent work, because now the fuel is moving out of the state of Hawaii. Pau. Halele no, Maikai no. Oi, you next. You got the next mission, right? Which is to, I don't know, she did the gravity. You're gonna do the non-gravity phase. So my question is, how long do I have to sit in my home and pray every day for the wellness and the goodness of the good works so that I can feel more peace as I fall asleep in my house? And I need to have that confidence so that our neighborhood is safe. The people across Halawa and beyond to Ewa, to Makapu, we are all safe. We need that confidence. And one way that I get it is when we hosted, you folks hosted, EPA hosted the open house. I really appreciate it. And so I'm really encouraging you, because you're going to be doing something new now. The gravity is coming to a close, your phases, but the way I learned was going to these open houses. And that was a great way for me and others to gain knowledge by talking to those presenters at each station. That was a critical part of being aware. I don't understand the websites. I can ask the website, but does it respond to me in a way that the presenters can? Aole. So I beg you to have those open houses again in an efficient manner so that we can have peace of mind. Because that was a critical part of learning and gaining answers from you folks, EPA folks. And I hear all these concerns and we gotta have answers, and it is a great way to educate us. So I ask you to please do that again.
Done, February 7th.
February 7th, okay, mahalo.
Thank you, Kaimo. Is there any other response that you would like? Or Kaimo, has everyone responded to your questions?
Yeah.
Okay,
February 7th, I'll see you there.
so February 7th is the next open house for defueling for the joint task force.
Residual fuel and the closure kind of in that middle transition. sorry, so it's a residual fuel and that transition, because we'll be in that left seat, right seat phase. So updates on closure, tank cleaning, those efforts, and update on those things that we're closing out or completing by way of removing the 60,000 gallons of residual fuel that we can reach readily accessible during that time frame. So it'll be an update there.
Thank you. Okay, so can we do one last question from Dave Mullenix? And he's online. Thank you, Dave, for waiting patiently. He had his hand up. There he is. Okay.
They can't hear me. Shucks.
I can hear you.
Oh, you can hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
I hear you, Dave.
Okay. Can you guys hear me there?
We can hear you, Dave.
Oh, okay, great. Sorry.
We can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, so they're talking about, you guys talking about the testing levels, and then people are still saying they've got sheen in their water. So obviously the testing machinery or testing equipment that you're using is not detecting the actual fuel that's actually still there. If you've got sheen on your water, you don't need to have a test kit to tell you it's there. It's there. The other thing, and so I don't know if you folks, you know, I think that if you're relying on data instead of saying, well, here I actually can see it, and if I taste it and smell it, it's there. So, and the Navy has, and I'm, you know, the Navy has more money than God. I mean, 60% of our tax dollars goes to the US military. That's how much our taxes are going. And you guys can get anything you want. If you wanted new machine guns, you would get them immediately for your base. So I understand, can I just ask the Admiral to say, we're going to replace all the water heaters and all of the piping, because obviously, as Ernie was saying, flushing out these pipes and flushing out these water heaters with water it is not going to take the fuel out, and it's absorbed into the plastic pipes. It's not going to, so those plants, they're all contaminated. It's obvious. This is not rocket science. So can we ask the Admiral or the Secretary of Defense just to, you know, give you the money to replace all those pipes and replace all those water heaters? Why take the chance when thousands of people are still sick? So that's my question. Have you guys asked for that money? Because I know if you wanted, you know, new ships, you'd get them. You know, if you wanted new machine guns, bombs, you'd get all you want. So have you asked to replace these water heaters and these piping systems in those homes? Thank you.
So again, policy question. I don't know if Carnegie, you want to answer with regards to that question?
Carnegie, if you could answer that question. And we'll keep asking that question so long as people are still getting sick. I mean, there needs to be some kind of solution. Carnegie, can you answer that question, please?
Yes, I was waiting to be unmuted. Thank you. No, we have not made a decision. It's just like last time. We are. I can only say that we're.
Carnegie, we can't hear you anymore, or are you not talking?
Dominique, is Carnegie unmuted?
Can you hear me?
He's unmuted now. Yes.
Now we can. Now we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. I'll keep it short because it looks like it's coming in. No, I don't have an additional update on that. to add to what we discussed last time.
When you say we're still talking about it. Who's we? Is it the Secretary of the Navy? Is it you? Is it SecDef? Is it being discussed potentially be put in the NDAA? Do we need to go through Congress for that? Like, who's we? And how long does it how long does it take to make a decision on replacing hot water heaters when we know that people are getting rashes after taking hot baths and showers?
So
I'm not going to
address causality, and I'm not going to address the assertions of continued contamination, because we may not necessarily agree with that, that Ernie was talking about. We is the Department of the Navy and the Department of Defense.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. You might have broken up a bit, but you said that you're not aware that people are still getting rashes after taking hot showers 2 years later?
That's not what I said. I said on these matters, again, we cannot comment on those because you're asking about causality, and I cannot comment on those. You also asked who is we, and I said it's the Department of the Navy and the Department of Defense.
Yeah, I just want to be clear. I'm not asking about causality. I'm talking about facts. The facts that have been presented to the leadership in charge, the pictures that are sitting on flyers that are on that table right now, those are facts. You all, the Navy has been out to these people's homes. You've seen the rashes, you've seen the sheens, you've been in the homes. So I'm not asking to have a discussion about causality. I'm here to have a discussion about the impact on human health. Your service members and their innocent civilian dependents, children. I'm asking you, who is we when it comes to making decisions on changing out basic nominally cost things like hot water heaters to see if potentially that can help people not get rashes anymore?
I think we have veered into territory that we are not going to cover.
You're not going to cover what it is that potentially is impacting your service member and their family's health. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I just thank you for the question, Dave. And I want to just say that, you know, we will continue to advocate for the families that are getting sick, so long as this is an issue. And I'm hoping, Carnegie, that you can get this resolved, because it's not gonna, I mean, it's like a drop in the bucket for the military, literally, exactly what Dave said, to replace the pipes, to replace the hot water heaters. I mean, how much does that cost? I mean, and it's, maybe say it's an overabundance of a caution, use whatever justification you need to. You just need to replace those pipes and the hot water heaters. I think from what Susan had presented, it's clear that there's something else putting, there's some other source for contamination and causing the illnesses that these families are still experiencing. And I think we're out of time. And I want to just thank everybody for coming. Thank you, EPA and Amy and your team. Thank you, Carnegie, for being here, and Steve. And thank you for showing up and answering these questions, General Link and Mark Williams. And I'm sorry, Ben Dunn, sorry. Thank you so much for coming. And I want to thank all the public for being here and you know, being part of this discussion. It's an important discussion. We're not going anywhere. And I want to mahalo all the CRI members online and everyone here for attending. Mahalo nui. And please help yourself to some food, which is sponsored by Mutual Aid Kalahui. And we are also providing water to families on the Navy water distribution line as a service to them. Mahalo.